So ever since I could remember, even when I was a child, I have wanted to be able to make shoes. And then in 2019, I finally took the step and I found a shoemaking class with the shoe surgeon, who is a custom sneaker maker. And that class was in LA. I have since gone on to several other shoemaking classes. I really love it. It's a really nice complement to sewing because there's a lot of similarities, but then there's also like a lot of really key differences that just really fulfill me artistically. So I thought I'd make a little series that kind of break down the steps of the shoemaking process. I will say, if you're interested in learning how to make shoes, I do highly recommend taking a class. It's so fun to meet other people who are like-minded. You get to walk away with a full pair of shoes that someone helped you make. Overall, I really, really recommend it. So this first one is going to be for how you prep the materials. So I know that seems like it's probably not going to be very much information, but there's a lot that goes into it. So before I begin, I want to let y'all know that the patterns I am using are from SD Custom Footwear. I've also done a class with them as well. Super recommend them also if you want to go to San Diego instead of LA. For this series, I am working on an Air Force One that just happens to be the shoe that I was making at the time. So just keep in mind that although these steps are fairly universal, every single style of shoe will be a little bit different. Every single type of shoe will be a little bit different. I've also made things like sandals. This will generally give you an idea of the prep process for any shoe. And as I go through these steps, there are a few things that I'm using a machine for that you could do by hand. Just keep that in mind. So if there's something and you're like, man, I don't have that piece of equipment, just know that there's other ways that you can do this. Even the sewing, you don't have to have a machine for. So there's lots of different ways to go around having equipment for this. So this is how you prep all of your shoe pieces. First things first, you need to trace out all of your pieces onto the leather with a heat erasing pen. I like to trace all my pieces on the back of the leather. This just kind of minimizes the marks that are left once you have the shoe all put together. Like I said, this is a pattern that I purchased from a company that makes patterns. You also have the option to make your own patterns as well, although that is definitely a more advanced method of making shoes. One step that I take when I'm starting a new shoe project that I didn't show in this video is that I like to separate my pattern pieces based on what color they're going to go with. This just kind of helps me keep everything organized, and it keeps the whole process of marking everything as simple as possible. And for right now, we're not worried about the registration marks that are actually like within the pattern. We're just focused on tracing out the outline of the pattern piece. Another factor to consider that is not shown in this particular video is that you are going to be making a right and a left shoe. So once you trace a pattern piece, you need to flip it over so that you get a right and a left corresponding piece. Something that is exclusive to shoemaking is the concept of a lateral and a medial side of a shoe. So lateral would be what we call the outside, the one that faces away from the other shoe, versus the medial is what we call the inside, and that touches the other shoe. Things like the toe piece or pieces that are going to be on the inside of the shoe are typically marked with a little triangle, and that lets you know what is medial versus lateral. Once you have all your pattern pieces traced out, it's then time to cut, and I do like to use leather shears. I think I have a lot more control with them. It's what I learned to cut leather with. I think they're a little bit easier to use, but this is a personal preference thing. Another option you could use for cutting would be to use either a scalpel or a utility knife. This is something that's very, very popular. I personally don't like it because I feel like I have less control with the knife. It also feels more unsafe to me. The scissors feel a lot more safe and I can control them much easier. So this is just, again, a personal preference thing. It's something you could try out both methods and see what you like better. Next up is skiving. So this is the process of thinning out the edge of a piece of leather that's going to go underneath another piece. So you'll want to do this when leather is being stacked on top of each other because leather is a very thick material, and if you don't thin out the edge, you'll be able to visibly see the piece that's underneath it. So I am very lucky that I have a skiving machine. The way that this works is there is a stone underneath that spins to pull the leather through, and then there is a cylindrical blade that also spins to cut the leather. This machine is a huge luxury. I know that not everyone has access to a machine like this. You can also do skiving completely by hand. There's lots and lots of tools for skiving by hand. I have done that many, many times. It's just a very laborious process. After skiving is complete, I'm going to iron on a non-stretch backing. Leather is a naturally very stretchy material because it is just preserved skin, essentially. So you want to limit the amount of stretch that can happen as you're sewing. So this backing will just make it nice and stretch-free. There are lots of different kinds of this material on the market, so the biggest things you want to look for is non-stretch and fusible. You might also notice that the backing pieces are just slightly smaller than the actual pieces of the shoe. The patterns that I buy have backing patterns in there as well, so I just use those to mark them out. But if you're making your own, you would just want to downsize this piece just a little bit. And then once the pieces are all cut and skived and backed and all that good stuff, it's then time to go back and put the pattern pieces back on so we can mark all the registration marks. This will be the actual pattern that we follow to put everything together. So this is going to tell you exactly where all the pieces are going to go to connect everything, and it will show you your stitch lines as well. And after all your hard work, this is how the finished pieces should look. We're almost ready to start stitching. As a final step before I start stitching, I like to go ahead and punch all the decorative holes before I start putting the shoe together. Some people do this after there's some assembly taking place, but I think it's just easier to do it when the pieces are all separate. Okay, so that's a fairly in-depth explainer of how you prep pieces. Like I said in the intro, every shoe is a little bit different, so just keep that in mind as you move through this and learn new styles and techniques and all that stuff. And everyone also has a little bit of a different method that they like to use. This is just how I like to prep shoes. So there's a lot of different nuances to it. This is something that if you want to get into it, you, just like sewing, you have to learn what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what techniques you like versus what you don't like. So definitely play around with it. If you have questions about the classes I've taken, resources for shoemaking, because it can be kind of hard to find the materials that you need, anything like that, I'm happy to answer those questions, and I will see y'all on the next one. Bye.